the best specialists I've ever seen, calm, confident, relaxed, and they don't say stupid stuff.
They call me the Iceman.
I tried to make the world shrink to about a 3-yard by 3-yard little spot. I couldn't even really see the front line in front of me. It was my holder and me and my few little steps.
For you guys that may know Brett but don't know, I mean, the guy knows what he's talking about.
Man, y'all order my dog's book, man. Look, the Kicker's Bible.
Roll another one 'cause I'm winning in my photo.
Welcome, specialists, coaches, dads of kickers, moms of punters, relatives of long snappers, and dogs that check kickoffs to the Iceman Podcast. It's the show with cold questions and even cooler guests. And I'm your host, as always, Brett Arkelian. I'm joined today by 3 outstanding guests. Okay, get ready to be tutored in the art of throwing that thing back between your legs. Okay, we're going in depth on the art of long snapping. And I'm really excited because this is not covered often. I think these guys have awesome stories. Okay. So talking about our first guest, he's been on the podcast. He's really like my co-host now when it comes to snapping. And he really is the one thing I really respect about Kyle is he takes a holistic look to snapping and body movement. I think that's really important. He played professional football as a long snapper. He's worked with 56 pro snappers and counting, but not limited to multiple NFL veterans and all-pro selections, such as Luke Rhodes, Ross Mastick, Zach Wood, Christian Kuntz, Jacob Omeyer, and 2 of the most talented snappers out right now, Casey Kreiter and Cam Lyons. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Great to be back. I like the co-host aspect of it now. Maybe we'll just be on every week, huh?
Hey, you know what? That's something I could be talked into, okay? In the next corner, all right, hailing from Iowa, all right? He was the long snapper and also backup center, okay, at Iowa. A 3-time all-academic, all-Big Ten. He's also a Pro Bowl selection. He spent time with the Cowboys, the Broncos, the Giants, and not only is he very talented long snapper, he's also a very talented Minecraft streamer. Casey Kreiter, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. You make me sound like I actually know what I'm doing. So that's some validation, I guess. But I'm excited to be here and chat about long snapping. It's something I love a lot.
That's awesome. Well, and it's not hard for me to make it sound like that because you are a expert in the field. And then also in the last corner, okay, hailing from Morgantown, West Virginia. He spent time in Akron and at Charlotte, all right, as their long snapper, was on multiple student council representatives, all right, so he's outstanding in his leadership capabilities, all right, was named to the NCAA Oversight Committee for the Student Athlete Connection Group, an academic all-MAC selection. He was on the Dean's List and also a 2-time All-Conference USA player. All right. He's now with the Chicago Bears. Cam Lyons, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, man. Excited to talk about snapping. Not many people ever want to hear us talk, so we get to talk about what we're good at.
That's right. And that's, you know what, Cam, I want to start with you, right? When we get into it, I think, yes, it's true. Maybe not everyone's super interested in it, but there's definitely a niche, however you say it. And there's a lot of long snappers, high school snappers that I hit up, our college snappers here at Fresno State, and then college and NFL coaches that I hit up saying, what do you guys want to hear or learn from these episodes? And I was inundated. I was flooded with a ton of questions. So I'm really excited personally to ask you guys some questions, okay? Starting with you, all right, you're originally from Morgantown, okay? I spent time at Marshall. That was the first university I coached at in West Virginia, okay? Just curious, in 2020, during COVID, was when I started there. Did you ever have any interest when going from high school to college at going to West Virginia and staying in Morgantown or even going to the Herd?
No, so actually my dad was AD at West Virginia, so Marshall was out of the question. And West Virginia actually had Rex Sunahara there. So now he's with the Brahmas, and coming out in 2017, Akron offered me a walk-on spot, and I was like, that's where I'm going. I had the chance to go to West Virginia, but Akron was the way to get on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you had a great experience there. And then talk a little bit about your adjustment and leaving Akron to go to Charlotte. Like, for why was that the right move to make?
Well, I feel like I did my time up there. Did 4 years, made some good friends. We had a turnover in staff, locker room turned over. So a lot of the guys I came in with were gone, and I felt like it was just time for a change for me. Especially being granted that 6th year. I was like, you know what? I actually grew up in North Carolina, lived there for 10 years in Greensboro. So felt like kind of going home, and it actually ended up working out really well. I knew and this just happened by happenstance. The coordinator or analyst from West Virginia ended up getting hired at Charlotte after I already signed and had no clue. About a week after I signed, the coordinator took another job at Memphis. So we kind of came into Charlotte together and said, let's roll.
Yeah. And what a great place, too. I mean, that program has the potential to be a very successful group of 5 school, right? Just location and the conference that they play in. You know what? I normally start out with a little heavy hitters section. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. Now, Kyle, question for you, okay? If you're breaking down a snap, do you break it down to phases or parts, or what would you call it?
So yeah, I think we can call it phases. Different pieces of the snap. They're all related, but they all do different things. So a lot of the times when we're looking at snaps, we're looking at are they controlling their body? Are they balanced with their start, with their finish, with their hands, and if they're being efficient with their movement? I think a lot of snappers struggle kind of a little bit in all of those areas for the most part, especially a new guy. But that's kind of the umbrella that we look under. And then every one of those categories, whether it's balance, efficiency, or control, can be broken into finer movements and details. So that's kind of where I start. And then we can get as in depth as we need to from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here we go. The heavy hitters section presented by the Kickers Bible. All right, you guys mind if we do this section? Okay. So we're gonna ask each of you guys, all right, and one by one, you can call it whatever you want. What is the most important phase that you look at or watch in snaps? Okay, Kyle, let you take it away.
I guess if I had to pick one, I would pick probably body control. The more controlled you can keep your body at the finish of the snap, the more consistent you can be, the more you can trust your form and just kind of create that intentional and deliberate throw. So there's a lot of ways you could move to get the ball back there. There's a lot of different grips and ways you could hold the ball to get it to spin. But if you're out of control, you're typically not going to be as consistent as you could be.
Absolutely. Body control. Okay. Casey, what do you think?
Yeah, I think along those same lines for me, I think it's the transition from release of the ball and into your set into protection. I think for me, one thing that I've noticed is there's a lot of variance in that minute window between release and set. And if you get into your set too fast, the snap's not going to be how you want it. If you stay in the snap too long, your set's not going to be how you want it. So for me, I think that's the most important thing. That's the thing that I'm constantly trying to perfect, trying to work out, where I have to be to get the best product I can put out on tape.
That transition. Okay. That's kind of where my mind would go. It's kind of like, let's say, the hands or whatever, the release, the fall through into it. Cam, what do you think?
100% what Casey said. So that's the biggest thing I had to learn last year coming into New York, and Casey can attest to this, was most colleges don't ask you to do that. So I'm looking that ball through and then run down, get into contained, and hopefully he fair catches or get a tackle. And just that repetition of having a solid, consistent finish and being able to trust my ball so that way I can get into my set. And that was the key for me to just focus on to keep growing.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, and it makes sense too. And that's, especially you guys have done it at a high level. This is where you guys agree, hey, that's that transition. We're going to talk about making that transition from college to NFL as this goes on. All right, so we talked a little bit about Cam and his backstory. Casey, all right, I've read here that you were a middle school PE teacher, also transitioned to high school and doing foreign language. What did you teach?
So I got my degree in science education from the University of Iowa, and I got to the point after that first go in the NFL in the preseason with the Cowboys where my now wife came home. We weren't engaged or anything. She came home. I was playing video games, and she kind of looked at me and was like, "Hey, the dishes aren't done. There's laundry in the bin. There's no dinner, made. I've been at work all day. I'm supporting you. We're working through this thing together, trying to, reach your dream. You got to do something." And I just knew like I wanted to continue to pursue football, and I had a degree in education. So it was easy. Let's try to get into substitute teaching. I can make my own schedule. I can train in the morning, be done by 3 o'clock subbing, go get some snap, run, lift, whatever I needed to do. And I love teaching. I really did love education. So that's what I did. But I subbed all whatever I could find from art, foreign language to PE. But whenever the science jobs came up, that's what I was doing. And I loved it because the teachers trusted me to move the class on in that content area. But it was a perfect transition, honestly, because I was able to help, pay some bills and not sit on my butt and play video games all day.
That's awesome. That's all. I taught high school for a few years there, and I know what you mean, that being able to be in the classroom, be around the kids, and the efficiency of your schedule, I think is great. What was your favorite class that you like to substitute or work with?
Any of the sciences really, but I was certified in life science, so biology, anatomy and physiology, and chemistry. But by far my favorite class, I did my student teaching and taught mostly anatomy and physiology and biology. So I just think science is fascinating in the sense that you're just constantly trying to discover things. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. So when you're teaching young adults, you just kind of tell them, try something. Like, hey, this is the problem you need to figure out. I don't care how you do it. I honestly don't care if you fail, but let's just work through it. And I think it ties into long snapping a lot because the way I learned was through my dad and myself and people I met along the way. And it was really just like watch people who are successful doing it, try it myself, and hopefully the product turns out good. And if it doesn't, let's just make adjustments. And since really talking with Kyle, just kind of refining all of that to now I'm not just trying things. There's a method behind the madness at this point. So I think those two things tie together and help me get to where I am today.
Brace yourselves for The Kicker's Bible. The Kicker's Bible, a specialist how-to manual born from a decade of dedication to specialists and special teams. This ain't your average football book. It's the holy grail of gridiron guidance. Dive into the wisdom of over 20 NFL specialists, including Eagles Hall of Famer David Akers and 15-year NFL vet and kicking guru Shane Graham, as they answer your burning questions to become the best specialist that you can possibly be. Whether you're a Pee-wee rookie or an NFL veteran, this book is your secret weapon to kicking success. It's out now. Go to www.icemankicking.com/books or our Twitter bio at Iceman Coaching or Amazon and search The Kicker's Bible to get your copy today. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Now kick your feet up and let's get back to one cold episode.
I want to branch off that question because I was also a substitute teacher who went into teaching and now into coaching. What was your least favorite subject to teach? Because I definitely have one or a class, and I want to talk about mine, but I want to hear what yours is too.
Oh, anything in junior high. I didn't go down to the elementary school level. Like at the time, those younger kids scared me because they had no sense of authority. Like at the high school level, it like the kids that might be troublemakers per se, they thought it was cool I played in the NFL, so you kind of got it in with them. But junior high level, they are a different animal. Like those kids are wild, crazy, and they don't care. Like, I mean, it's more managing behaviors than actually teaching content. But I always cringe when the only jobs were junior high jobs. But you learn to love it. Like you figure it out eventually. But I was trying to avoid junior high jobs at all costs.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think those were tough. My least favorite day I had to sub was going to a kindergarten classroom because I had not taught kindergarten. And they will tell you if you don't do it the way their teacher does it, because they're used to this rigid schedule. Like first we do this, then we do that. Now we talks to us like this. And if you do it wrong, they're like, that's not how we usually do it. That was hell that day. We made it through. I would rather take a middle school day over a kindergarten day.
Yeah,
But
I'm experiencing that now. If I got a kindergarten of my own, and kind of, and I'm doing that as a parent. I couldn't imagine a classroom full of kindergartners.
absolutely. So I just wanted to bring that up. Now we can get back on track to football.
No, I love that, Kyle, and Casey too. Those stories. I mean, I think it's so cool. My dad listens and he's very involved in the podcast and all that. But he says, especially when I have NFL guys on, like whatever, we've had a lot of great guests on. But even listening to someone like Vinatieri, who was lucky to have on here, talking about how he was working a normal job, and doing little things, working at a grocery store, whatever. But those jobs and that journey makes these stories so cool. It's like, yeah, these guys are, doing normal things or do normal things during the day, and then they work and they, make their way at night. So I think that's pretty cool. It's almost Batman-esque. You guys are a little Batman, normal person by day, and then you go and fight crime at night. Absolutely.
One thing I think it comes down to for a lot of guys, just to kind of oversimplify it too, is helping them build body awareness. I think a lot of snappers don't know what to feel or what it should look like or how it should look. So even just giving them that structure can go a long way too. I actually just had a meeting, virtual lesson right before this call where we talked about how that snapper had grown a lot because I was always asking them, what did that feel like? What are you experiencing? And we talked about how that's helped him slow the game down and be able to have thoughts and see the ball out and feel what it should look like and be able to transition faster. So it's almost like we complicate things so that we can simplify it instead of just always keeping it so simple that you don't understand what's happening.
Yeah, that's really good. Kyle, what's an example of that? Where you're talking about, how did that feel like? And, what part of their body were they focused on? What were they talking about?
So this is something that I can definitely relate to as well. So when I was in college and I would snap, I would throw the ball and I had no clue what happened. I knew it came off my hands, but I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel any of like the chain reaction of anything working together or a flow of my body. And, I think as I continued to grow and develop myself as a snapper, it turned into, it almost felt slow motion, the way like I could feel the parts of my body moving. I was more aware of the positions I needed to hit or wanted to hit, and just kind of could feel that out a little bit better and just put more thought into it in practice mode. So I didn't have to think about it in game mode. And then I got to build a little bit more trust with my body. But like a big thing would be like, hey, how did that feel off your hands? And I think most young snappers would have no clue. How did the ball come out tilted? Did it pull off to the right or left? And as you continue to get more in tune with how the ball should leave your hands or what does balance feel like, you can start to refine those things and make corrections that aren't going to hinder your snapping, but help your snapping, because you're not just tinkering with something, there's a purpose behind it. And you learn the cause and effect a little bit more.
Like you said, having that purpose behind it, that's huge. And that's why you guys are so good at what you do. Okay, cool. And now kind of going off that, all right, now let's transition more to talking routine. I know you guys are very good at this because you've developed routine throughout your careers, okay? So let's talk a little bit about competition. Now, personally for me, all right, my first year out of high school, I went to Fresno City College, okay? And they had like damn near 8 kickers, okay? And I was one of 8. All right, I was 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing. Okay, so I'm just trying to make my way out there. And you're seeing balls left and right, and we're just trying to get some reps in there. For me personally, I intentionally would take my rep, go through my steps, bang a ball, and then turn around while the other 7 kickers went. And I'd look at that other goalpost and I'd visualize myself taking a rep going that way from the spot I was standing. Could have been 70 yards away. I know that may not be ideal, and it wasn't because I was afraid of the competition, but I was so focused on myself. I knew if I saw someone crush a ball, then I would think, damn, now I got to step up and hit a good ball. Or if I saw someone hit a line drive, subconsciously in my mind, I'd be thinking, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't hit a line drive. Right. So for you guys, when you went to pro camps and, you can talk about, or any of the Zoner stuff or, any NFL camps you're trying to make a team, what was that experience like? What were your emotions going through that, and how did you handle it? Casey, you can kind of start with that.
Yeah, I think it's a continuous process that's kind of changed for me over time. When I got to college, I went as a linebacker. I wasn't on the depth chart for long snapping. The team knew I could snap. I maybe got one rep every couple weeks on the scout team. We ran a pro punch, so there's a big learning curve for me in college. When I got to the NFL, go to Dallas, LP was a snapper, and I watched everything at that time because I was constantly trying to learn. I think the other thing I learned along the way was when you switch with the ones and the twos, typically the cards don't change, right? The twos are getting the same cards as the ones. So I knew if I could watch what was happening with LP, it was probably going to be the same thing. As I got more comfortable and more established, I stopped watching when there was other snappers in camp or if the backup was getting reps. And maybe it's a superstition thing for me now. Like last year with our third guy, Mike Adams, was like trying to show me the cards before a Thursday or before a Wednesday punt period, and I was like, yo, no, I don't want to see anything. I get to the point now where I don't want to see it because I don't want to have an idea of what's happening in practice. Because when you get to a game, you have no clue what's going to happen. You can look at a formation and know tendencies, what the coach likes to do, what this team likes to do. This player's really good at this, but I don't want to have an idea because I don't want to play the drill, especially in practice. So I think I went from paying attention to a lot of it to learn as much as I could and maybe give myself an advantage to now I don't want to see anything. I want everything to be as hard as it can possibly be, because typically if you get a good team and you have a good scout rush team, your practices are harder than the games because these guys don't care about jumping off sides. They don't care about down and distance. They're just in a stance trying to beat you to look good on tape. And I think I love that part of it. Like, it's a challenge. The challenges are what makes you better. So I'm to the point now where I try to make it as hard as I can just to be ready for Sundays, Mondays or Thursdays or Saturdays, whatever day you play.
Yeah, you're right. The challenge makes you better. I think that's really cool. Cam, what about your experiences trying to make a team too? And that's got to be an intense mindset, right? Of all these other guys that are trying out and you're seeing them all snap. Like, how do you not get overwhelmed with the fact that there's a bunch of other guys trying to win the same job?
I mean, obviously, I was in camp with Casey, and I did the same thing last year. Man, just taking it all in and watching him and looking like, man, he makes that look easy. And then I got to step back and remind myself, what, this is year 10 for you, Casey?
Yeah, this is my 10th or 11th camp. I just finished my 8th
Yeah.
credited season.
Yeah, but you 10th camp, and it's like he's doing something right. Let's watch everything he does and makes it look easy, and don't be afraid to ask questions. You might not get an answer, but it's better than not asking it at all and wondering. But really focusing on giving 100% of you. What can I do to make myself better today? And that was the whole thing with competition for me. Is it's more a competition with myself than it is somebody else, because I'm the only one that can make a difference to win a job or snap the best, or it's all within me. Although football is a team game, the way I look at it, for us three, snapper, kicker, punter, it's got to start with the snap. It's individualized. It's got to start. Then you got the hold. Then you got the kick. So if my individual job is not good, nobody else's is. And I try to break it down into, I'm going to give my 100%. And if that my 100% isn't good enough to win that competition, then yeah, it's all right to be upset, but I'm going to hold my head high.
Yeah, that's all you can do in that situation, right? And compete and give your best. I like that. Kyle, do you have something to add to, I didn't really have you hit on that last time too. Like, what is your experience with that competition aspect?
Yeah, so to kind of go off of what you were saying, when I had experiences with like multiple snappers in one tryout experience, I didn't love to watch the other guy because I would do the same thing. You self-consciously judge what the other guy's doing, and then you internalize that, and then you try to do better. And one thing that I've learned is that in that moment, you're not going to make yourself any better than you've already trained yourself to be. So worrying about what somebody else is doing is never helpful. So I remember there was a workout I was at, and there were 4 of us snappers snapping back to back to back to back. And I would snap my ball, and I would just like put on my blinders and look at my shoes until they said my name, and then I was back into it. And I think that was helpful in that moment. And then when I was in my first professional game, I kind of translated that into learning how to block out the rest of the noise, the guy across from me who's probably talking something to me, the guys around me who are trying to get set. I was just kind of in my own world, getting ready to go, taking in what I needed to, but also blocking out what I didn't need to be hearing or seeing as well. And I thought that helped me focus. I could take my breaths, I could calm my heart rate down, and just kind of get into my mental zone, which I think is helpful too.
Be focused on your own mental zone. I really like that. So now kind of transition from that. All right, you make the team, you're situated. Casey, you've done this, like you said, 11 camps, 8 accredited seasons. Okay. Okay. College is, 12 games or whatever. And that feels freaking drastic to me. I remember I played Division II football, and we played 10 games, and my ankle was all jacked up and went through a whole season. And then I transferred to an FCS school, and we played 12 games. And I felt like that was exhausting. You're going preseason and a 17-game season. Okay. How do you maintain during that such a long grind, a long season grind?
Yeah, I think it's just finding a good routine. And honestly, things happen so fast during the season, you don't even really know what week it is. I don't know. Like I literally turn the page so fast. Like from the end of a game to the start of the next week, it's like 12 hours by the time I've turned the page, and it's like, okay, what day is the next game? Or not even what day, but how many days do we have to prepare? Okay, so we have a full week. On Wednesday and our Monday, Tuesday, I'm going to game plan, do what I need to do to prepare. Wednesday's punt, Thursday's punt return, and then Friday's all of them. Saturday just clean up, and then we're playing. So everything happens so fast. I think the thing for me is trying to fit everything that I need to get done or feel like I need to get done into the weeks when they get shorter is the hardest part. But honestly, I like to say I got lucky because out of college, I only played 3 games. And then I got cut before the 4th game. When I came out, they had the 2 cuts. There was a cut after the 3rd game and then a cut after the 4th preseason game. So I only played 3 preseason games and then had to miss a year and watch football. Same thing happened the 2nd year. So when I finally got a chance to play every game, I would have been fine playing 25 games. And honestly, that first year in Denver, I tore my calf week 10, Wednesday in practice, and I missed the last 6 games. So like for me, I understand how hard it is to play all 17 games, but I also know that it's special to get that done. And like I said, I'm hoping to play, now you make it to the Super Bowl, it's like 21 games. I'll play a Hall of Fame game, 3 preseason, all 17, and 4 or 5 playoff games, and play almost 30 games in a year just to get a ring. That's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, keep adding games, man. Keep them coming.
Yes, and the more games you play, the more paychecks you get too. So that's also a nice little incentive.
Hey, I will say, and you kind of hit on it a little bit, Casey. Talk a little bit about. All right, give us an example of any game week, and I kind of want you to talk about too from early in your career compared to later in your career. Let's get in depth with. Take us through, the day after a game up until a game. What is your daily schedule leading to you snapping in a game?
Yeah, for me, let's start with like a Monday after whatever week it is. Monday, I'll get a lift in. If I got to do any type of body work, rehab, get something worked on, get that done. And then I'll go straight to the film room. And for a couple hours, I'll sit down. I'll buzz through the previous game. But a lot of times I'm already ready to move on. Whatever, if I got to fix something, we'll fix it during the week. I know what it is.
Around what time is this? Like
this is probably like 11,
okay.
10, 11 in the morning.
Go ahead, yeah.
And then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go through the other team's roster. Every player, I'm going to write them on the board. If I know their name, I'm writing them down. If I've heard their name as a good special teams player, I'm writing them down. and I'm going to look up their bio on their team's website. We're going to know everything about these people. And then I'm going to watch the tape, right? So Monday, I'm going to watch the previous 4 games that this team's played. Somebody jumps off the tape in any phase, write down their number, write down their name, figure something out about them. And then Tuesday's the off day, so that's kind of the end of Monday, right? Just get prepared what I need to do and do it on my own. Not that I don't, you trust your coaches, trust the scouting reports, but I want to see it with my own eyes. I know what I want to see, and I don't want to miss anything. Tuesday's the off day. I usually don't go in. I got 3 kids, so that's family day. We call it forced family fun day at our house. Wife plans something, and I'm just the yes man. Wherever we're going, we're going. Whatever we're doing. She's the boss. Wednesday, get up about 5:30. I'll get in by 6, get a lift in about an hour. And then from 7 till about 8 o'clock, I'm buzzing through all of the punt rushes from this current season. And same thing, if something pops up, write it down. If you see a consistent rush they're running, write it down. If it's a certain situation and the certain tendencies pop up, write it on the board. And then what I've done recently is I try to get the group of core special teams guys, or really anybody who wants to stop in around 8 o'clock, just get 5-10 minutes with the guys around you. Because the thing I've noticed now as I've gotten older is veteran players have played and seen all of these teams, and they have teammates on this other team, whether in college or a previous NFL team they're on, or they've worked with this coordinator or the assistant special teams coach, and you just listen to what they know and you learn from them, because this is all information that you can use. So then you kind of go through the day, you got meetings, practice, and then Thursday morning, what I do, again, same routine, 5:30, get in at 6. I usually do a little body work, do a little cardio, just ride the bike. I grab a book and I read a book while I'm riding the bike. I think it's just kind of nice to decompress a little bit. But I want to get up and get moving. But Thursdays, I watch the previous years, all those punt rushes. And same thing, kind of write down tendencies, what you see. And then Friday, there's usually a cut up in the folder. Friday, I get another lift in. I started doing this last year and it really helped me stay healthy. I started squatting on Fridays. I don't know why, because I'm probably crazy and I like lifting weights, but it actually helped me feel better. But Friday, there's a cut up of punt rushes that the coaches put together, and I'll just watch that. It's all stuff I've pretty much already seen, but every once in a while, one slips in there that I may have missed. And then Saturday, Jamie Gillen and I, we play a lot of ping pong on Saturday during our downtime. I think it's like the preparation's done. Now it's time to just like get ready to play a game, have fun going to play the game. So we usually play a game of pig. We play a bunch of ping pong, and then Sunday just go play the game. So there's a lot of work leading up to it. It's a lot of mundane work. There's a lot of young players that come by and they'll stop and be like, how are you still watching punt rushes? Like this is the third time, like 2 years ago, this is the third time we played Philadelphia. You've seen all of these a million times. Why are you still watching it? And for me, it's like, I don't ever keep the notes that I write. I erase it. And so when we play a division opponent for the second time, I start over fresh. I've already written it down, but I know it, but I just want to do it again. It's all part of the routine for me.
That's awesome. I think all that
What
stuff.
a day at work though, huh? Like to all of us that don't live it, Casey, like, man, that sounds awesome.
You talk about it like in the locker room, and it's crazy. Like, especially when OTAs start coming, you get with some of the guys who've been around a long time and you just laugh. You look at each other and laugh, and you're just like, this is a job. This is what we get to do for a job. Like, what other job do we get to do this? We get to work out. We get to hang out with friends. We get to make fun of each other and play ping pong in our downtime. And like we said earlier, like I'm not that far removed from being a high school teacher. Like I remember what that was like. I remember showing up in a classroom and dealing with kids all day, which I love doing it, but I like playing football a lot more. Being in the locker room is a lot more fun. And I think that perspective is good to keep.
Yeah. That's huge. Well, and you're like another coach on the field. I mean, that sounds like a lot like what our Sundays, after a game are like. And I think that's really cool. Now, when you're watching these previous punt rushes, what are some tendencies that you do see, or, what do you notice from teams? Do they use the same type of twist, or what are you looking for?
I think what I found over time is coordinators run what they like to run. So a part of that scouting process is writing down the coordinator and knowing what they like to do. So, certain coordinators are more aggressive, certain coordinators maybe lean more return. and then you get to know their personnel. So like I've played Dallas a million times, and if they put Dorrance Armstrong and 54, his name's slipped my mind. I can't believe it slipped my mind right now because the dude's a monster. He plays gunner on their punt team. He's a D lineman. But when they put those two guys in the A gap, it's going to be a rush, and those guys are running some type of bull rush or pick twist. That's what they do, and they're good at it. They're extremely good at it. So again, body size and tendencies. The other thing, usually on between Monday and Wednesday, I'll sit down and watch all the punts from the previous week. So all the punts from every game, and by about week 8, there's a themed rush that's working and having success in the NFL. And it's a copycat league, so all the teams have it in. These coaches see it, and they have it in their back pocket. So I think the biggest thing is just being able to recognize those things. I think there was one year when I was in Denver, we played Washington, and it was the end of the game. It was a gotta have it rush. And I remember we break our huddle, go to the line of scrimmage, and I saw the formation, and it clicked in my head. I was like, oh, the previous 2 years they've had a gotta have it rush, and they've come out in this formation. It's most likely the rush they've run. Now you can't guess, right? If you guess, you're going to make yourself look silly. But just having that awareness, it's going to give you an advantage. And when we're talking about the transition from snapping it and finding who you're blocking, having any slight advantage is going to help you out. And I think that's the biggest thing. And then sometimes you miss things. Like when we played the Jets last year, they put their rookie number 11 in the A gap on punt rush. He never rushed in the A gap. Well, the dude played at Iowa State, and he went viral from jumping over cars at Iowa State. And what they do? They ran jumper in the A gap. Like that's something that I should have recognized and had the awareness to see, but in the moment I missed it, and it's something that I'll remember forever. It's a learning moment.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say, Case, that you recognized it and you immediately took his legs out or something.
I wish I would have. That would have been a better story.
Well, I think that's cool to hear though, because I remember one of our first times working, Casey, that you brought that up about just knowing situation and having situational awareness. And that's something I like to bring up to a lot of the guys that come to my pro prep camp. And we talk about like different stunts you can see and things like that. And it's really hard to show them what that would look like, without watching a lot of film and showing them that kind of stuff. But it definitely is extremely important because it makes your life a lot easier. You're not just guessing, what could happen. You know what to do in certain situations, and you're putting yourself in the best position to do so.
I think Cam and I talked about it when he was with us, and I just kind of sat down. I think I told him at one point, like, the more you can just sit and watch the tape, the more you're going to learn about protection. Now, it doesn't make the actual act of learning how to protect and getting that job done easier. But like I said, I was lucky we ran pro punt in college. So the formation recognition, I had a little bit of experience in it, and they can only run so many things out of every formation, right? And once you know the hardest things to protect yourself with out of the formations, it can help you game plan your set, your snap, your timing, all that stuff a little bit more. Now, I say that, but Indianapolis, they came out and ran a rush against Tennessee this year that I've never seen in my entire life. And you talk to a lot of coordinators, and they said the same thing. Like, this was incredible. Like the rush they ran, it got home. It was incredible. And you know what? I think they ran it like week 13 or 14. In the next 4 weeks, you saw it ran 5 or 6 more times from different teams. Again, it's just another example of copycat league. Everyone recognized this rush was profound. It was like really cool. It was awesome to see, hard to protect, and teams started running it, and it was a successful rush. You'll probably see it more next year too.
Was it some sort of cat look, or what did they?
It was just like an overload. It was just a 5x3 look, but the way they aligned the formation was they really stressed one side of the protection where you could sneak a guy through a gap. But the nuance of what they did on the backside of the rush stressed all those guys even more. So again, it wasn't anything brand new that it wasn't a scheme that maybe hasn't been run before, but by alignment, it made things really, really hard. It made the protection of it hard. And when you're talking about punt pro, you're talking about inches. Inches literally matter. And just getting off the ball late if you're a guard or a tackle, like they have a hard job seeing the ball. If it's loud, you can get cut off and you can get picked. So every position is really hard on a punt team. And I think that's what makes it such a beautiful game. I like to say it's like jazz, right? Everyone's got a part. You don't know how the pieces are going to fit together, but the best jazz music, it sounds good even if people are doing things differently.
I agree with that for sure. So then, in case you kind of hit on too, just generally knowing what is the toughest things that you can get as a long snapper. What are the toughest looks you can get? We kind of talked about this too with Kyle last time, but what are some tough things that you can get that you have to really work on?
I think that historically the hardest thing to block for a snapper is just straight snapper pick, 4x4 snapper pick. Um, I think when you get in the 4x4 look, you got to be ready for everything, right? You can get jet rush where these guys are speedy and they're trying to just beat you off the ball. They can twist one way or the other with a pick from the backside or not. Teams have now started, they're going to run like maybe a 3-4 or a 2-3-4 twist where maybe the 2's looping all the way back to the A gap and the 3 and the 4 are kind of rushing wide to bait you to run out there. So I think that's the hard, whatever the looks where guys can go any direction they want to go. That's the hardest one. I think that's the hardest one by design because you got to be ready for everything. And I think that's when you got to trust your technique. You got to transition fast and trust your eyes. Like if you can get your eyes in the right place right out of the snap, you're going to help yourself out and then your feet have to come with it. But I think those are the hardest ones. I like I said, I think every rush can be successful. But yeah, I think just 4x4 looks are tricky because there's a lot of things they can do.
Sure. And there's no real tell there. Kyle, working with snappers trying to make that transition from college to the NFL, a lot of people will say that learning to block and protect are the hardest thing. And we actually talked about the fundamentals of protection, So what are the hardest things for college players making that transition to the NFL as far as, the snapping it and sticking it and then protecting? What are the hardest things they struggle with?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things it comes down to is knowing how to do it. There's a lot of different ways you could just get your body going backwards, but there's a couple things that we can do to help guys be a little more efficient with their movement, what feet they're, how they're stepping, the body positions they're getting in. And I think probably one of the biggest things that I've run into is their thought process about it. I feel like there's a lot of coaching cues that are almost detrimental to snappers and protection, whether it's coaches that only harp on getting depth or only harp on getting their eyes up. I'm so much more into the technical side of it that I want to see, their feet moving properly. I want to see their bodies staying low and in a good position to be able to absorb force and redirect energy, rather than I'm concerned with them being able to whip their head up super fast, only to get run over because their feet weren't moving, or to work on getting so much depth that their body's out of position because they're just pressing backwards the entire time back, rather than getting their body in a position to create leverage over the attacker. So I think what it all comes down to then is, just understanding the basics, where their feet should be, where their body should be. But along with that too, now this is maybe makes it seem a little more complicated, but like the snapping aspect does play a big role in that. If a snapper is out of control with their body at the finish, if they have a sloppy finish, it's harder to retreat quicker because there's a recovery piece there that they have to snap, recover, and then come out of it. Or they're sagging through the finish, and that makes it slower too. If they're stiff or inefficient with their movement, they're typically not going to be as smooth with their movement, which it's all a big domino effect. Everything's correlating, everything's working together here. So if one thing's off, it's probably going to make you struggle with something else. And I think a lot of snappers make up for that by just trying to sling and get up as fast as they possibly can. But the one thing I relate that to is like, how disorienting is it to just like whip your head up as fast as you can? Like even just there for a split second, you guys were blurry. I couldn't see who was who. You don't see where people are moving. So we talk a lot about eye discipline. If you're trying to block this direction, snapping and moving your chin and head that direction, rather than whipping up and then trying to find something, can be extremely beneficial. And that's only just one small piece of it. So I know Casey and I have talked a lot about What do you do? What have you learned? What have you experienced? And I love picking the brains of guys that have actually been doing it, because I watch the technical side, and I'm always finding things that guys can be doing better technically, but knowing what they're thinking and what they're trying to do and what they're seeing in the moment makes a big difference too. And we're just trying to combine all those aspects together.
Yeah. And being open to that conversation, that communication, right? It only makes both of you guys better.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to learn as much as I can from these guys who are doing it, because I'm never done learning. I'm never done growing as a coach. So I want to make sure that I'm not like, hey, I've learned everything I can. I'm just going to hunker down with what I know, and that's what I'm going to teach for life. I don't think that's the signs of a good coach. I think if I can always continue to build myself, I can continue to help building the guys that I work with too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay. So now let's talk about, being a rookie in the NFL, because we're kind of on that topic. Cam, making that transition, right? And when you're going against defenders, these guys are bigger, faster, stronger, more athletic, right? That's what Kyle always says. And just the whole transition from college to the NFL, what were a few challenges for you, in case you can hop in there too if you want, but Cam, what were a few challenges for you making that transition?
Man, I mean, really, first thing first was getting into the pro style scheme. It you see it through walkthroughs, you see it in OTAs, and you throw the pads on, and these guys are coming, and it's a whole different speed, a whole different world. And I mean, it was not really a shock, but coming from a group of five, you're getting the best of the best every week. You're not in the SEC Big Ten where everybody's going to be 6'3", 225, 250. You had some guys that were straggling around, that were the guy that was trying to run you down the field might have been 5'11", 185, and you could throw him off of you. And hey, look, now you got this guy in the A gap. You're in a brand new scheme, first time you've ever seen it. And it's for as much film as you want to watch. And when I was in New York, I buzzed through all of the previous camp's film, and just to get my bearings of this is what I need to expect, kind of game plan my approach. And man, I mean, for as much film as you want to watch the first time in it, you're going through a ringer. And Casey can attest. I mean, man, it took me probably a good week and a half, 2 weeks to finally get my bearings and not become comfortable, but become confident in, I know I can do, I know I can make this block. I know I can, this is what I need to expect here from this look. And it hits you like a ton of bricks. And the faster you can try to gain your confidence and understand, this is my job, this is the body positioning I need, this is where my eyes need to go immediately, the better off you're going to be.
No doubt. So kind of gaining that confidence, right? Casey, you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's a huge transition, college to the NFL. I think, like I said, I had experience in a pro system, so I was somewhat comfortable, but the speed of the game at the NFL level is just, it's unmatched. It does, even coming from Iowa to Big Ten school, like these guys were moving way faster than I ever imagined people could run and move off the ball. I think on top of that too, I remember my first punt period during an OTA, or maybe it wasn't training camp yet. Rich Bisaccia was our coordinator, and he said, "Hey, scout team, put on these pennies." So I put the penny on, and I go to look between my legs to snap, and the penny isn't covering my helmet. I can't see the punter. So I snap it. Snap's not great. Rich kind of looks at me and he's like, "What happened?" I said, "I can't see the punter." He goes, "Dude, then take the penny off." And it was like, oh, I'm in the NFL now. Like you just got to do whatever you have to do to have success. And if that means like taking the penny off, like they don't care. Like you're the long snapper. We all know you're the long snapper. You look different than everybody else out here, dude. And then you transition, you get going. And I remember we had a punt period on my birthday in training camp, and we were practicing against the Raiders. And Jack Crawford was a D lineman. He wore number 58 in Dallas. He went to Dallas, I think, after that year. And I gave up a block on my birthday, backed up in a punt period against the Raiders. And it was just like the worst feeling in the world. But being able to just move on from that and just like, you talk to other players and they just kind of tell you like, listen, if you play this game long enough, you're gonna get got. It happens. It absolutely happens. And I think as a young player transitioning your rookie year, it's hard to accept that fact and it's hard to come to terms with that because you've worked so hard to get to that point. And especially as specialists, we all know like it feels like you have to be 100%. And when you're not, and you're a young player and you get limited opportunities, it's hard to kind of just move on from that. But the sooner you're able to do that, you're going to have success. If you're around the right people, the right coaches, they understand that. I think T-Mac talked about it with Cam, and I remember being in the room, and he just said, listen, you're going to fail your way to success. That's how it works in this business. You just got to stick with it long enough to get there.
I think one of the things that I see from a lot of free agents is that, or just well, even just from living that lifestyle myself, you can't prepare yourself for what that looks like in even just practice. I remember I'd have buddies rush me. I'd have, other athletes try to rush me, but you probably don't have pads on. There's probably not a guard, and you're just trying to figure out what it might be like. So while I still really think it's important to understand like where to put your body, what your feet and your hands and your eyes should be doing, and to absolutely practice that, you kind of just have to work your butt off and get thrown into the fire, and you either thrive or not in those situations. And I think a lot of guys end up thriving because you'll figure it out. You get beat once, you'll learn from it, hopefully, right? So I remember in rookie minicamp with the Jets, it was probably the last punt snap of the weekend there. The guy that was rushing the A-gap, they said pick up the pace a little bit, and he ran 100 miles per hour right through me. No pads, just helmets. He was trying to make a team. I was trying to make a team. We were on different levels as far as like what that percentage effort was supposed to look like, and we both ended up on the ground. And so that doesn't look great, And so once again, I think just getting thrown into the fires is kind of just a rite of passage into playing at a high level too.
My big thing, and I was lucky to go to Charlotte, and there's a ton of guys that come through kicker, punter, snapper. That was a big thing for me. I mean, even as a college guy, it was to get around as many, and I was lucky with the area I lived in, but get around as many NFL guys as you could. And I mean, to hear the stories of these guys, the same as we've all been through, getting cut, this, that, and the other. It's like every guy said the same thing was, you're going to fail your way to success. And hearing that from not one or two people, but hearing it from almost every guy who's made a couple $1 million in the NFL, it helped you gain that confidence of it's okay to fail, but how do I fix it? And fix it quick. And I remember T-Mac said that to me all the time was mess up quick. And it's all right. You're a rookie, you're a young guy, but the quicker you're going to fix that mistake, the better off your career is going to be.
Sure. It's that fail forward kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Okay. So kind of, taking that, you guys have handled failure. You've been in that. Let's talk about a game situation. Casey, I'll ask this question for you because you've been in it. All right. All right. Let me paint a picture for you. It's the fourth quarter. All right. You're late in the game, maybe, within the 2 minutes, 120 kind of area. You're going to get, you've watched the pressure tape of the block looks all week. You're going to get some type of pick or a twist, their best look. Right. And then coach gives you the call, the protection, whatever, and you start to run onto the field. Give me like your thought process up until the snap, and then, as the snap happens.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of that mental prep work happens during the week and then leading up to running onto the field. I think there's a lot of communication between myself, my guards, the PP, like what's the game plan, right? So we have a lot of different cadences you can use. What have we used throughout the game? I keep track. What have I used in previous weeks? The last time we were in this situation, what did we do? And then you pick one, pull one out of the hat. Hey, we got these three options. What do you think, coach? Hey, what do you think, coach? What do you want to do? Because at the end of the day, it's the coach's decision, right? Like, and if you get a good coach, he's going to lean on the players on the field to make those decisions. But at the end of the day, coach says something, we're going to go do it. And a lot of times I think sometimes those situations we're talking about are a little easier than maybe earlier or middle of the game, because sometimes you don't really know what a team's going to do. You're like, hey, are they going to be rush heavy today? Are they going to be return heavy? You get that first 4th and 6 or 7 on your own 32-yard line. You find out right then and there. Are they going to be coming after us today? Are they trying to set up some returns? And when they come after you right away, you got to stop it early. If you can stop those first 2 rushes on an aggressive team, they kind of start thinking, hey, maybe we'll go to some return looks. These rushes aren't working out. But once you get on the field, honestly, I black out most of the time. Like, I try not to overthink it. You see your tendencies, you see your cues, you switch up your timing so you're not getting timed up. But I do not. I truly don't try to overcomplicate it on the field. It's see ball, grab ball, throw it as fast as you can. I don't want to say as fast as you can. Throw it as efficiently as you can. Like, do what you do best, and then protect. Like, that's my biggest thing. Like, I've always been more protection conscious than maybe a lot of other guys I've run into. And I think that just comes from coming from a pro style punt in college. Like, I've never been in a punt system where you just snapped it and covered. So protection was always the thing that I had to do to get on the field. So when I'm on the field, there's not a whole lot of thinking going on. It's just trust your instincts, trust your preparation, and go from there.
Sure. And do you have talking about the different cadences, right? I mean, I think for some young guys, it could be hard if they're trying to vary that and they're actively thinking, okay, I need to do this. Do you have a couple different timing things or, that you can go to that don't screw you up? Like, you kind of just have practice and you're okay, this time I might wait 1 second, this next time I may peek my head up and then snap it 2 seconds after that. Do you have that practice throughout the week?
Yeah, I think you just got to sprinkle it in throughout the year, because again, punt protection is not easy. Like, you're like the offensive center. Like, how many times have we seen false start on everybody but the center, because there's a timing and rhythm to a cadence. And I think being able to communicate with the guys around you what I'm thinking about doing, but also knowing the timing of the cadence where I can throw some things in before we get to the point of no return that might throw the other team off. So I think just mixing that in, and again, it's just all about communication. That goes back to what we talked about earlier. That first Wednesday or the first day of your game week, getting with the core guys, sitting down, talking with them. And that's a conversation we would have in that meeting as players. It would be, hey, this team's really good in these certain situations. Something we need to think about as a team is when we get into this situation as players, we're going to sprinkle some of this stuff in, or we're going to bring it up and see what coach thinks, if he's okay with it. So we're not surprised on the field. It's not like the first time we've said, hey, we're going to use this changeup, because you don't want to do things for the first time on the field. That's a bad place to try things.
One thing I want to point out too is I think a lot of younger guys struggle with that varied timing of the snap because they're so tense and like just rigid with their thinking of the snap and how it should be. Well, one thing I want to point out, look at these guys' faces right here. Look how relaxed they are. Like, they're just relaxed dudes. That's one thing when I watch a really good snapper, their face is relaxed. You can tell they're just relaxed in the moment, or at least they look like it. Anytime I've ever ran into a snapper who seems too active, talks too fast, thinks too fast, I know they're overthinking, overanalyzing, overdoing. So I think it's really important to learn how to calm yourself down and relax and breathe. And, on a game day when there's a stressful situation, the game's on the line, there's maybe a heavy rush coming. The last thing you want to do is change your mentality that's been working for you the entire game and put more pressure on yourself mentally. So once again, I think just to help out younger guys too, is just learning how to relax, picking your head up and then putting it back down, or pausing a little bit longer as you breathe in your stance shouldn't throw you off. It should just be part of your daily routine in general. So just working on that as consistently as you can. You should not always grab the ball, head up, throw the ball. There should be a rhythm to your throw, a rhythm to your sequencing, but not necessarily to your the timing of your routine.
Yeah, I think you kind of said it, Kyle. I like that. Talking about being relaxed in those situations, like breath control. That's something I've been really big on our guys with, is actively, practicing that on our own. So when you get in those situations, you're not overly stressed.
So I want to add, I mean, I started reading this book after camp called, and I'm sure a bunch of other people have read it, called Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. And now we all know golf is a different game where I don't like the win. I can just back away, come back to it. But the big thing that stuck with me was a routine. And I felt this going into more so workouts than, because I read it after work or after camp, was creating a routine for myself of the guys running the workout or holding the pads. Well, the ball's already set up. I watched some guys at some other workouts. They'd just go right up, grab the ball, go. And I built the routine of, to make it like a game. In practice, we huddle up. In a game, you huddle up. And step back 4 or 5 yards. Give yourself a couple breaths. Create a routine. Step up to that ball confidently. Get your read. Get down. And after that, that routine is built. And creating that routine to where I know I'm confident and I'm comfortable in this situation. Now I can start to throw in a head bob and wiggle the fingers, and it doesn't throw me off. I've had my routine. Now this is what I have to do to be successful from this point on.
I think that's a great point, Cam, and something college coaches need to focus on more. I think sometimes they can not have a ton of knowledge when it comes to specialists, and then they just start throwing things out there for them to work on. At the very least, I feel like my job is like a caddy when it comes to golf. If I can just give them a routine and give them something to adhere to, that's going to make them better, right? And more comfortable. So,
Man, I hated it. My coordinator in college, we'd be on the opposite field. Of course, we're alone. And instead of throwing 15 balls in a row and you got a big pile next to you, just grab one, throw another. It's like, dude, slow it down. Like, just chill. You know what? Step back, crack a couple jokes, and then let's go again. And then break the huddle, get back up to the ball. Because we're going to run it like a game. We're not just going to practice to practice. We're going to build a routine. But it's only you two on the field right now. So let's treat it like you have 9 other guys with you. And then that way, when it comes in practice and it comes in a game, dude, I've done it 1,000 times in a camp. It's all right. I'm comfortable in this situation. I've seen this 1,000 times, and a backed up punt with 20 seconds left isn't a world ender for me. Hey, that punt is the same as the first quarter punt, the first one of the day, where my nerves are good. I'm going out, I'm doing my job, and that's all I need to do to help everyone else out beside me that needs me to do my job correctly.
One thing that I like to point out too is that there's a big difference between a routine and a rigid routine. So that, having a routine is important, but having to set your left foot before your right, lick your fingers twice, tap your hip towel 3 times, and blink twice before you snap every ball maybe isn't as beneficial as most guys might think it would be. Because if I don't blink twice and touch my towel and turn around and tap my shoes before I snap each ball, then I don't feel good about my snap. So having something that gets you in the right spot mentally, and I used to do the same thing Cam did. Step back, pretend you're breaking the huddle, you walk up, you set yourself up, and it's just like you're in a game. That helped me not think about what I was doing and just kind of get into it. But having like these tendencies that you feel like you have to do to have your best ball that don't actually apply, like obviously setting yourself up straight, that's a good thing. Putting your hands on the ball the same way, that's a great thing. Correcting your stance and making sure you have a flat back, that's a great thing. But I feel like these guys have these rituals or these if a black cat crosses your path,
Superstitions.
Superstitions. Thank you, Casey. If you don't want to have these superstitions about your routine, and if you don't do it, it's not going to be great, right? So that's definitely something I want to throw in there too.
Routine versus rigid routine. I really like that. I think that's That's clutch. That's key. Okay, so a little bit we talked about in-season schedule. Now, out-of-season schedule, I think it'd be eye-opening for kids listening and long snappers listening that overdo it. And I'm sure Kyle, you see it. Casey, talk a little bit about if you can just give us a kind of a in-depth of your overall calendar. Okay, you're done with season now. You say, I'm sure, just like all specialists, you take a few weeks off. Then what is your schedule like? What is the amount of balls you throw? What do you do in the off season?
Yeah, for me, it's changed a lot, honestly, in the last probably 4 or 5 years. Um, I used to snap nonstop year round. In college, like you couldn't pay me to stop long snapping, like because I knew I needed to do it to get better. I didn't know any different. All I knew was snap as many times as you can, film it, watch it. If it's not good, do it again. And now it's transitioned to typically after a year, kind of depends on how my body feels. I've had years where the elbow's in really bad shape and I got to take some time off and just calm the tendonitis down and get it back. I think this year is one of the few years where my body felt fantastic after the season. Like elbow felt good, wrist felt good, but you still got to take time off. So typically, I'll do some other things. I'll do some like just ride the bike. I like to play tennis. I'll try to get in a wrestling room here or there if I can, and just do some hand fighting, things like that. Um, and then when I get back into snapping, there's not a real rigid routine. I kind of just go with like I'm getting the itch right now to grab the football and start doing some drills. So I start from the basics. Like I'm not snapping and setting. I start at ground zero. I start at stance, release, grip. I mean, I'm just talking day one basics. Just go back to it. And I'm not even really snapping a full 15, 14 yards. It's just working the tiny little details. And a lot of times it's talking with people. Last couple of years has been Kyle a lot, and just pinpointing 2 or 3 things that I want to get done and change. Not even really change, just maybe adjust or improve before we get to OTAs. So I hammer those things without even thinking about the other parts. And as we get closer to OTAs and you get closer to, hey, now we're going to be on the field with coaches and evaluators, let's put it all together. But the way I see it is the foundation I've built as a long snapper already, it's like riding a bike. Like I'm not taking so much time off where I'm going to forget those things. Let's really stress and only emphasize the improvements we want to make. And then when the time comes to blend them together, they should mesh pretty well together. And if they aren't, I'm going to recognize it pretty quick because I have a pretty good feel for what I need to do. And if it's not working, then we just forget it and we get back with the people that you trust and talk to them and find a better solution and then go from there. But eventually you get to the point, and in my mind, when you get to training camp, you are just doing what works, and you're doing what works every single time. If you got to work some things here or there, go ahead and work them. But find a routine to hit the drills you got to hit to keep the maintenance and keep up with your technique. But at that point, like you just got to you got to put it on tape and put it on tape every single day.
Mm-hmm. And when are those? So OTAs is generally what time period?
I think we start mid-April. Most teams will start mid-April with OTAs, depending on if you have a first-time head coach or not.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like we're going on our big trip, postseason trip next week. When I get back, like that's when the snapping will ramp up. It'll be probably 2-3 times a week. And just I'm definitely a guy, like if I go out and I have a plan, this is what I want to get done. If I snap 5 footballs and it looks really, really good and what I wanted to get done gets done, I will pack up and I'll go home. It's like, hey, everything's clicking. Let's just good. Remember it, bottle it, move on. If it's not, I probably snap too much if things aren't working well, trying to get it to feel good. But yeah, I think I'm pretty fluid in it. Like I said, I think I have a good feel personally for what I have to get done. And I think you talk to some people, maybe there should be more structure to it. But again, I think what I've done has felt good and worked for me. And I've learned a lot just kind of trying to focus more on the techniques. And I think it's helped go back to basic fundamentals from the start and then advance it as you move on.
Yeah. And Kyle, that's kind of what you talked, or that is exactly what you talked about understanding how it feels off your body. And if you can accomplish that, just like you said, Casey, then you're good. You don't need to snap freaking 55 balls, March 13th or something.
I'm really big on the process over the product, especially in the off season, because if you can make the process efficient, you can make the product efficient. If you can control your body, you can control the ball. So that's definitely something I'm big on and like to instill in a lot of guys I work with. So definitely seeing that, like hearing that Casey's making that happen as well, and continue to build on that.
Kyle,
I think, sorry
go ahead.
to piggyback. I think for me, the reason I don't like snapping the full 14 or whatever when I'm doing that is because sometimes when you're working these tiny little minuscule changes that are going to help you improve, the overall product's not going to look great. And I know that would frustrate me. That would frustrate me beyond belief, where I would probably just throw it out the window and just say, hey,
You're not the only one.
and that, I think that's what's helped me, is just say, hey, no, we're looking at this specific thing today. That's what we're working at. If the end product doesn't feel right or doesn't look right, we'll get to the point where we evaluate that. Let's just work on what the people we trust are telling us is going to help us, and go from there. And I think that took me a long time to mature to that point. And I think I go back to when I first started learning how to set in high school, going to Iowa. I spent a month on my own trying to figure out how to set. And if you watch me snap for that month, that first month of trying to do it, you would not believe I could snap for a middle school football team, because I couldn't snap a ball 14 yards to save my life and try a set. It took me that long to do it, but it was just persistence of, hey, if I don't figure out how to do it, I'm not going to play this position that they think I can play. Like, and you just hope that they're going to let you continue to play linebacker at that point. But I think that I knew the real value was long snapping at that time.
Every snapper that I work with, they go through a phase of questioning, is this what I should do? Because it's not comfortable. But once again, if you can understand the what, why, and how, and put trust in that process, then you see the benefit of it. But it's really hard. Everybody wants instant gratification. They want to be able to, they want you to tell them, do this, it'll give you a better ball right this second. And one analogy I throw at them a lot is like, okay, when you go to the weight room, are you just seeing gains every time you go, or is it progressive? That's the same thing with changing technique or working on anything specifically with anything. I mean, it's a progressive load, there's a progressive change, and you have to have patience, and you have to be able to understand and trust that process.
Yeah. And Kyle, how do you get people to believe, say someone's super frustrated and they're just down and out. They're like, hey, this is just not for me. And it's the right thing. They need to make that adjustment. How do you get them? What do you tell them to believe, hey, this is going to come out on the other side all right?
Yeah, honestly, sometimes there's guys that they're past the point of no return. They're like, you know what, I'm doing well. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And that's fine. Making adjustments and getting better and pushing your limits isn't for everybody. I mean, there's people that go in the weight room and they just try to maintain their strength. They don't want to get stronger. They just want to maintain. And I see that mindset every once in a while too. And it is what it is. It's not for everybody. I think early on in my coaching career, I had to sell a lot harder. Now that I've worked with some bigger clients, some big names like you guys here, people trust me a little bit more. They understand that, like, okay, you've helped this guy and that guy, and so I'll just trust you. But also, I can also explain the why and the how, which is something that nobody could ever do for me, and that was frustrating. They would tell me to snap faster, block better, or just offer random tidbits of advice with no reasoning behind it. So that was my mission going into coaching, was I want to be able to explain the why, the how, the what, and logically be able to do it, rather than just like using anecdotal, instances like, hey, this one guy did it this way, so that's how I think you should try it. There's rules that apply to physics, that apply to every single sport. That's all we're trying to apply here. And while that may look different, athlete to athlete or snapper to snapper, the rules don't change from Casey to Cam to Luke to Jacob to Christian. So I think it's just a matter of like, their mobility might be different, their the mentality might be different, their strengths might be different, or just their perceived notions of what their snap should feel like might be different. But once again, the rules don't change. So that's what we're really pursuing.
I think the one thing that helped me buy into some of the changes I've made the last couple of years was the timing of reaching out to do these things. I think a lot of times young guys, especially, you see rookies come in, or younger players or free agents who are trying to learn how to snap, and they're trying to do it in OTAs, and they're trying to learn all these new techniques and new things in OTAs or training camp. And it's like, this is not the time to do that, because there's going to be a learning curve. And if you struggle now, it's going to be super frustrating. So I think trying to make those changes and adjustments at the right time of the year is important. Like and I think back to college. I remember watching college specialists like kickers and punters. They'd hit a rough patch, and we'd be in there watching tape, and they'd be like, "Gosh, I just need to. Maybe I should, instead of jab stepping, I should eliminate my jab." And I'm like, I don't think week 3 is the time to eliminate your jab step. I'm not a kicking coach, but this sounds like a really bad idea. Like, maybe after this season, we try to eliminate your jab step. There's something else we can do at this point. And I think just, again, having the maturity to know when to make these changes and how to add them in at the right time and the right frequency is important. But that's why you got to work with people that you trust and that are knowledgeable, like Kyle was saying. Because, like I said, when I reached out to Kyle the first time, that was the thing that I love that he said was, hey, I'm not going to change how you do what you do right here, but there are fundamental things that I've found are successful for everybody. And when you explain it, it clicked in my head. Like, I was a guy that could long snap, but I couldn't teach, the kid next door how to long snap. I didn't know how to do it at the time. In talking with Kyle, he kind of helped me understand all that. And I think it's really helped me understand how to make changes in the right way.
Yeah, you're saying mid season is not the best time to make some wholesale changes.
I mean, unless it's do or die at that point, and it's like, hey, you got one bad rep and you're donezo. Yeah, probably not the right time.
Dude, I mean, same thing, being in Charlotte and having a big group of pro kicker, punter, even big college kicker, punter guys coming through and training and being able to snap and learn from them. I remember it was my first year at Charlotte, and I was around some of these guys, and they were starting to kick the ball again in mid-February, and they were trying out new things. And I looked and I'm like thinking in my head, like, how are these guys making this money? And the ball's going onto the other field. But their whole mindset was, hey, I liked that drop. That felt good. I like where we're going with this. And it made me realize, as a college snapper, like Casey said, I would overreact sometimes before I worked with a coach. And because I've never had that teaching, but to hear that throughout, and it was like, hey, you know what? I don't really care that I shanked that ball 3 balls in a row, but I'm really liking how comfortable my drop is, or I'm really liking how comfortable my finish is. Kind of ingrained in me before I even started to learn how to set and everything of, hey, you know what? My ball might be really bad, but I'm liking where I'm getting with this product. And now let's piece them all together. And let's get them together before the time really matters, to have them all ready to go.
One of the things that most younger guys don't understand too is segmenting your training and not worrying about the back half or your follow through when you're focused on the front half of your snap, or not worried about the spiral when you weren't even worried about the spiral. Like if my goal is to work on putting my core in a good position, I don't care if I throw a knuckleball as I'm working on this. But so many snappers, and it's mostly younger guys, but I've honestly ran into it at every level. I'll tell them, hey, focus on XYZ, and they'll snap a ball. I'm like, hey, how did XYZ feel? And their first comment is, but it wasn't my best ball. I could throw a better ball. Like, yes, but that wasn't what the attention was supposed to be focused on. So learning how to segment your thought process and your training can go a long way. So I'm really big on kind of putting your training into 3 different phases. We have phase 1 that's very drill oriented, process oriented. What are you feeling? What are you doing? And making a change with your movement pattern. Phase 2 is going to be more of a blending phase where you're trying to snap it maybe 10 yards or less. You're still focused on the process, but you only have one mental cue. Phase 3 is our performance mode, where you shut off your brain and you just see what happens. But the more we can cycle from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3, throughout a training session or throughout a practice can be very beneficial. So that's even something I'll have guys use during season. So, hey, during a typical college practice or even an NFL practice, you got some downtime here or there where maybe we throw in a drill that is beneficial, not to help you dissect and really, pull apart all these different components of your snapping, but let's throw in a softball and just work your hands through a drill. Let's work on some of the sequencing. And then you go into a blended drill where you throw some short distance stuff to feel good or to think about one thing, and then you're back into performance mode. But so many snappers throughout the season are in a forced performance mode where they don't focus on any drills or working on anything. So I see a tendency of guys getting into the season and performing at this level, and their technique kind of goes down a little bit throughout the season because of that forced performance mode. So my biggest suggestion has been, what are you doing in your downtime? Are you just blocking everything out and only getting full reps all the time? Or are you adding in something that might be beneficial to you? And then in the off season, we're flipping that on its head. Get rid of forced performance mode and focus on phase one or the process mode as much as you can, because we know what happens during the in season, so we got to make sure we have a good balance of everything through there too.
Now, you guys have been in the league for a while or have had experiences, especially Casey. So, to these young guys, they might think, hey, you get to the NFL and you're good. You're perfect. You've done what you need to do. But a lot of times staying in is a lot harder, right? So now that you're on year 11, okay, what's a common error that you struggle with? And, what do you do to drill it, or what do you do to fix it? And Cam and Kyle, we can talk about this too.
Yeah, I think for me, it's constantly trying to perform at the same level you performed at the year before. I can sit here and tell you 2 years ago, I left the season thinking, man, that wasn't a great year. I think I was inconsistent. I was on the ground a lot in protection. We didn't have any major mishaps. And we had a successful year as a team, but I think I sit here and would evaluate the year, and I could look at it wholly and say, man, I'm not super proud of that product. And for me, it's just getting right back into it and focusing on the consistency. And for me, it's the body control and the replication of the body control, right? I know what it should feel like. Now we have to make sure it feels like that every single time. And I think the one thing that I've found that I tend to lack as time goes on, or I forget exactly how you call it, the performance, where you have to perform every single day, whatever you call it, Kyle.
Forced performance mode.
Forced performance. When I get into that, I look too much. I tend to just look at the end product of, did the ball get to the punter where it should have gotten, and did I block the person I was supposed to block? And in between those products are, is it a tight spiral? Is there good velocity? Am I hitting the positions with my body that I need to hit? So the one thing I tend to do is I get real tight with my upper body, and I tend to push a lot with my arms and force my arms to go where they need to go, instead of keeping some type of elasticity in there, some relaxed with it, to be able to create the whip. And then when I start thinking about whipping too much, that's when balls tend to fly a lot of different places. I'm not talking about like flying over to the punter's head, but like like maybe at his forehead, and then the next one's over his left shoulder, and then the next one's like knee high, but it's an absolute rocket, where you got to find the happy medium in there somewhere between like just getting the ball where it needs to go and then getting it there. I like to think efficiency. I'm always trying to perfect efficiency. So, and as time goes on, like Kyle said, like as you get older, you get a little stiffer, things hurt more. Things get tighter. So it's about keeping mobility, upper body mobility, lower body mobility. And I think I can sit here and happily say that last year was probably the best year I've ever had in the NFL. I think in terms of consistency, protection, I ended the year with, I think, 5 solo tackles, which is more than I've ever had in my career.
Big time.
Like, I look at that and it's like, okay, we're still improving and things are going good. The evaluators, they recognize it, said similar things, which is awesome to hear, especially when you get validation from the people you work for, when they can, because a lot of times as a snapper, the only time you get told anything is when you do something wrong. And a lot of times you don't even need to get told you did it wrong, right? Like, yep, I know that was not acceptable. We don't have to sit there and watch it 8 times on tape. I already know it. I know it's your job to tell me that. But when you can get some validation, some positive validation, it just, I'm a words of affirmation guy anyway. Like that's my love language. So it just comes tenfold. So for me, those are the big things, right? Like trying to understand the whole process, not just looking at where did the ball end up in the punter's hands and did you successfully block the person in front of you? Because there's a lot of things in the middle that matter.
I think one of the coolest things, Casey, when we first got in touch, I think one of the biggest things is like, hey, I want to add some speed to my snap, which who doesn't? Literally everybody that hits me up is like, help me snap faster? And I didn't tell Casey, hey, you just got to get stronger or you just got to throw it harder, which is like baffling to a lot of athletes. Well, but I'm hitting the weights. Why am I not snapping it faster? So Casey hit on it a little bit through there too, but like being looser with his body and moving more efficiently was what happened or what we worked on to help him increase his snap speed, which is really cool to hear. And I don't know, Casey, if you want to share what coaches told you when you got back from that offseason, but I think that's super cool. Just hearing what they had input about.
Yeah, I think for me, that was my transition from Denver to New York. The crutch after my first year in New York, the crutch was always, hey, like everything's great. You're super consistent. Your protections is awesome. You know, you're not the fastest. You don't snap at the fastest. And it was at that time when I think it was like my second or third kind of evaluator said that it was like, okay, we got to figure something out because I'm tired of sitting in these meetings and being told, hey, everything's great except that needs improved. I want to sit in this meeting and have them say, oh, we don't got any complaints, which is never going to happen. I understand that. And that's what I love about this sport. But yeah, I remember I reached out and just said, hey, this is what I want to get better at. Here's what I've tried. And the only thing I tried was grabbing a medicine ball and throwing it between my legs as fast as I could, thinking that was going to help. And I think it maybe helped a little bit right away, but you hit a wall and it's like, okay, I don't know what to do now. And we talked about being more efficient. And I think the coaching point that stuck with me was when before working with Kyle and learning the nuances of how to do this job and how to do it efficiently, I was pulling out of my snap before the ball was even out of my hands. So it's like I was trying to create all this momentum back towards the punter with my body and my arms. But before the ball was out, I was uncoiling to get in protection. So I was losing all that efficiency. The following year, after kind of working on all that and making when I say minor improvements, like if you just watched it, people wouldn't notice. But if you knew what you're looking for, you could really tell there was a difference. And I remember the evaluator just said, hey, like, this is a great year. Like, I think you really probably added a couple of years to your career because now this is no longer a glaring not issue, or I don't want to say glaring issue, but this is no longer something that we need to talk about anymore. Like if you continue making these improvements, like you're going to get to where what I said was maybe you just sit down and they say, hey, great year, no complaints. We'll see you next year. And then that's the goal in my mind. That's always the goal, but there's always things to improve on.
And Casey, who are these evaluators? Are they coaches, talent scouts?
Yeah, it's usually like special teams coordinator, head coach. I've been fortunate, and then some may say unfortunate. I've had five head coaches in my 8-year NFL career, and four going on 5 different coordinators. So you get a lot of different perspectives. And really my first 2 years here with New York, I was super lucky because, Thomas McGahee was here, Joe Judge was here, Anthony Blevins was an assistant. Amos was also like he helped out with the team. Like all 4 of those guys had special teams coaching experience in the NFL, and I think there was maybe 1 or 2 more that had special teams coordinator experience in the NFL. So you get to talk with all these guys who they have experience, they know what they're talking about, and you just learn from them. You see what they say. As hard as it is for me to sit there and ask somebody, hey, what do I do poorly? Like that's hard for me to sit there and listen to as a competitor. It's also important in my mind. And, a lot of times I leave those meetings with pretty upset and pretty angry and have some not nice things to say about them in my head. But I think that's what's helped propel me and to continue to seek improvement.
Yeah. And how do you hammer that. And you kind of talked about, I have a feeling, Kyle, this has to do with the lats, but how do you really work and drill throwing a faster ball if it's not throwing a big medicine ball through your legs?
I think talking with Kyle and what we talked about is there is a elasticity, a relaxation you have to have in your arms, in your upper body to create the whip motion. Like you're whipping the ball. That's the only thing I can really think of is you're trying to crack a whip, right? And when you crack a whip, it comes back and it's nice and loose. And then when it gets to the end, it snaps. And that's when you get that nice, whipping motion. And I think back to when Kyle touched on it earlier. When I got to Denver, I was always trying to get back as fast as I could in protection. And I'd be so out of control. I'd stumble backwards. And I remember Beep Gould, he was the assistant with the Chargers, Robbie Gould's brother. He's been an assistant in the NFL forever. He just kind of said like, hey, smooth is fast and fast is smooth, right? So when you're trying to be so fast that you're out of control, you're not being smooth and you're not being fast either. So it's having some smoothness in your motions to create the velocity. And again, like I'm a guy that like a lot of times I have to watch a video. I'll check out the SpecialTeamsU Instagram and I see guys doing, the movements where they're kind of rolling the ball and then they whip it through it. And I watch it. I'm like, it clicks in my brain. Like, oh yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Oh, okay. We talked about it and I thought I had it figured out, but I see it now. And now once I see it, now you try to replicate it.
Yeah, and so once again, we get back to like the rules of physics. So literally every throwing and striking sport you could imagine, we could bring up any kind of sport, the rules are the same. So if I'm throwing a baseball, I don't throw the ball, I throw my body and the ball follows. If I cast a fishing pole, I don't throw the bait, I throw the reel and the bait follows. If I'm striking a baseball, if I'm swinging a lacrosse stick, all those things apply. So if we can just get guys to understand that we control the body, the arms follow, the sequencing of the body, getting you to feel that step before throw or pull before you throw sensation makes a big difference. So there's a lot of guys I run into that are trying to only snap a fastball with effort. And if I can take them away from snapping with effort and get them to focus on the technique, we can sprinkle effort into that technique. But it can't be effort alone because that really forces guys to be out of sequence, out of control, and just create bad habits. Unfortunately, there's just a lot of coaching cues out there or mentalities that would tell a snapper, I need you to get the ball out of your hands as quick as you can. Or you have to drive your elbows back, or you have to move the ball first. And if you look at any other sport, you never move the implement first. It's always the body before the implement. But for some reason down the road, somebody came up with the idea that you have to snap or pull the ball first, which completely defies the rules of physics there. Now, the tough thing is you could pull the ball first and still throw a fine ball, especially if you're a really good athlete. If you got good athleticism, you have a good build, sure. That's where I run into issues with guys are like, but I'm not broken, but it got there. Then I have to use analogies like, okay, if I threw a ball like this, but it got there, would you think it didn't look good? Would you think, hey, but there's a better way? That's the biggest thing that is my uphill battle is guys who are effective, who think they're good enough and not knowing what things could look like if they were to continue to pursue perfection or just more of an understanding of their whole process in general.
Yeah, that mobility and that body control, right? You're using more just than your arms, but your full body. That makes a whole lot of sense to me.
Absolutely. Efficiency and body control are like two of the biggest things that are extremely important for a snapper.
I think the catch-22 of the whole thing too is, and Cam's touched on it, Kyle's touched on it, is you're trying to create this level of relaxation in your body with absolute monsters standing across from you. Right? Like, hey,
counterintuitive.
My first year in the NFL, we play the Texans, and I look to my right A gap, it's JJ Watt. Okay, hey, PP, maybe send me the other way. And it was Jadaveon Clowney. And it's like, okay, you got to have some form of relaxation to get this job done. But these are two, like, offensive linemen can't block these guys. And I have to do this now. And I have to, like, So it's a balance of the whole thing, right? Because again, like you said, get the ball out of your hands as fast as you can. I like to think that, and I also know that if I try to just get it out of my hands fast, I'm messing up the timing of everything else,
But it's
right?
not slow as smooth and smooth as fast.
Right. So it's
Happy medium with everything, right?
a constant battle between all of these factors while also having the physicality and strength to bow up against these rushers. So it's a beautiful thing. It truly is when you dive into it. And I've had very, very limited opportunities to talk to like the beat writers who are in the locker room every week. Every once in a while someone will come and want to talk long snapping, and it takes about 3 minutes before the person stops and they're like, there's a lot more that goes into this than we all know, isn't there? I'm like, yeah, how much time do you got? Because I think we only got about 25 minutes left of this media session.
Okay, so I've been feeling there's like an angel and a demon on your shoulders, and one's like, pure power, and the other one's like flexibility, and they're always fighting each other.
And I just when we're on the field, you just tell them to shut up and just, like I said, grab the ball and get it to the punter, and just we'll figure out what happened after that.
Yeah, honestly, that like every session I have with somebody, they have this devil that's like, snap it faster, snap it harder, be aggressive. And I'm trying to just like really push this angel of like, hey, let's just relax and smooth out. But, at the end of the day, I don't want them listening to either one. I just want them to do it, and their training will take over. So if you train specifically, deliberately, intentionally, good things will happen. And even if it's not perfect, because I'm always pushing guys to chase perfection with drills, movements, processes, it's you're at least going to get better because of it, and once again, it's incremental. It's a progressive thing. It's not overnight. So I think that's really hard to understand when you're just getting into something new.
Yeah, well, man, that's really cool. I feel like we could talk about snapping the body movement and, intensity and speed snapping all day, but we are rounding out here. I really appreciate you guys coming on. We got a final section, okay, presented by the Kicker's Bible. You guys ready for the rapid fire section?
Let's do it.
Absolutely, bring it.
Fire me up. I'm gonna ask each of you guys. We'll go Casey, Kyle, and Cam. Have you guys shoot me a short answer, okay, of what you think, how you would handle these situations. Here we go. Okay, starting with you, Casey. What do you do to mimic game situations? How do you rep it?
Just try to put yourself in that situation mentally. The Super Bowl, I was a nervous wreck trying to get myself ready for all those field goals at the end of the game.
Kyle.
I think just being able to learn how to shut off your brain and just get reps without having to overanalyze or overthink is probably one of the best ways to go about it too.
Like that.
100% try to put myself in that situation mentally as much as I can, if it's just me or if it's me and a punter, and try to psych myself out where it's okay if I mess up in that situation, but I'm going to prepare myself for when that situation does come.
Love it. All right, Casey, back to the top. How do you handle having a bad day? I mean, it feels like the wheels are falling off. You can't snap a good ball. How do you handle it? How do you get out of that funk?
Usually a pint of ice cream helps.
One of the best things that you can do as an athlete in general, having a rough day, is walk away. Live to see another day, come back. Sometimes you didn't eat well, you didn't sleep well, you didn't practice well, you're sore from training. It's okay to take a day off and just be like, you know what, things aren't clicking today. I'm going to take a day off, reevaluate, and come back tomorrow. I personally have had better days doing that the next day than getting in there and just grinding out bad habits.
Cam, how do you get out of the funk?
Dude, just remind myself that, everyone has that day, and then go do something I want to do. Play some extra video games, take the dog on a nice hike, do something to just get out of it. So it's over, it's done with, move on.
100%. All right. High school to college, and then also college to NFL, making the adjustment. What were the biggest changes for you in your journey and career, Casey?
The speed of the game is by far the hardest thing from high school to college, and then definitely college to NFL. Like, that jump is absolutely insane.
Well, he kind of took the main answer there, but also the physicality of players, the level of players. I went from D3 to professional. That was a big jump. I don't know what playing at Iowa to go to NFL. I think Casey probably had it easy. He played against good players. But I definitely, the physicality is different. You go from normal people to freakish athletes. Pretty crazy of a difference.
It's all technique. These guys are paid to beat you and figure out how to beat them.
100%. 100%. Okay. Kind of a funny situation. I like this story. Shane Graham was on the podcast and did my book with me. He's talking about handling failure, and the best way he handled a major loss actually saved him a job when he missed a field goal. The way he went through it, he was going to get cut, but he handled it in a very mature way. And that really saved his job in the eyes of the franchise. And then another situation where he probably lashed out and didn't handle it in not such a good way. Casey, can you give us an example? You don't have to name names, but what has been the best way? Maybe it's you, or maybe it's someone you've seen that they've handled criticism, and then maybe one of the worst ways.
Yeah, I think for me, the worst thing that's happened to me was first PAT in 2022 season. I snapped a PAT about 40 yards and it went about 4 yards in the air. I think the best thing for me was I owned it. I didn't make excuses. And I literally just went back to work. If people asked what happened, for me, it was, hey, it was a bad rep. You didn't need to explain it any more than that. Just own it, move on, and just try not to do it again.
So obviously that's probably one of the best things you can see in a specialist world is guys not blaming other people for mistakes and just making sure that you let people know that it happened, it's going to get fixed, and I got it, and just having a confidence about them kind of goes a long way too. So I think just the holding yourself accountable and having confidence about it will save you in the eyes of others, because as a coach, you want to be able to trust those athletes. And if they have that confidence, sweet, it happened, we're going to move on. But if they don't seem confident or they're trying to pass the blame, then it definitely, it doesn't show well, or it doesn't sit well with that coach either.
Yeah. And that's a good, these are all really good ways to handle it. Have you guys seen, a bad example of like, oh, that's a way not to handle it? It doesn't have to be specialist either. It could be a teammate, or again, you don't have to name names, but what's a way that you saw something you're like, that's not the way to handle it?
Helmet throwing is never a good option.
I'm a big fan of helmet throwing, though. I won't lie.
I feel like just showing your emotions. Like everybody goes through highs and lows throughout a game, throughout a season, but like just composure. I've played on teams with athletes, like something bad happens and their helmet is smashed, broken on the sideline. Like, what did that do? That might have felt good at the moment, but like everybody sees that, the coaches see that, and now maybe they're losing their trust in you as well, right? Like, how are you going to handle that composure?
Sure.
I think for me, I've seen it in a lot of former players where they try to come to the defense of teammates they've had, and they put other players, maybe other people in an operation on blast on social media. I hate to see that, because if you've been in this business, you know how hard it is. I get you might be trying to help out a buddy or shed light on a situation, but let them deal with it. Let the people in the building deal with it.
Once again, the best specialists I've ever seen, calm, confident, relaxed, and they don't say stupid stuff.
I had a unique situation. I did yell a curse word last year on the sideline, and my son asked me when I got home why I did that. And I was like, oh, you know what? I forgot that you're sitting pretty close and you heard that and saw that. So we had to have a little learning moment for myself and just kind of express that, sometimes people yell bad words.
Hey man, how lucky is he though? He's got front row seat. I mean, good for him. He gets to take it all in.
It's awesome. It's awesome that he's taken a liking to it now.
Yeah, really cool. Okay, here's an example for you. I'm a 5'10", 230-pound long snapper, right? What do I have to do to make it to the NFL? Maybe relax on those measurements, because I know that's not ideal, but maybe a shorter, stubbier long snapper. What do I got to do to make it to the league?
I think the biggest thing that everybody needs to be able to do is just overcome those obstacles. Like if you're not the tallest guy, you better make up for it in some other or in some other way. Run faster, transition better, snap faster, and make yourself stand out in those regards. You can't fix that one thing, probably. Like if it is height, I would say, maybe not most snappers, but there's a lot of snappers out there that they're just not going to overcome that height barrier. But they can make up, they could be stronger, they can be faster, they can be more efficient.
I'd say play it up. Just use it. You got natural leverage, and just keep pumping the natural leverage you got in protection. You look at a guy like LP when I came out, the dude was like 6'6", I think. He was massive. And then the longest tenured snapper right now in the NFL is John Weeks. He's on the shorter side, but man, the dude is balling. He can sling it, he can still move, and he doesn't get beat in protection.
And those measurements probably fit him too, right? Isn't he about 5'10", 230, 240?
I'll give him 6 foot.
Okay. I remember meeting him in Houston, and you're right. He's not the tallest guy, but man, he is a hell of a snapper.
John's awesome. I love him. One of my favorite dudes that I've got to know in my time in the NFL.
Absolutely.
Dude, you took mine again. He was the first guy that came to mind. Obviously, I haven't met him, but been working with a punter who played for the Texans first 4 weeks, and he said the same thing: is he ain't very big, but he moves well, and he puts the ball in the same spot every time. And that's the thing, that just be consistent. Find your consistency and stand out through that. And if you're doing all the right things, you're going to be found and you're going to have success.
Yeah.
I will say every short snapper's role model is John Weeks, and that's who they bring up. But I will also tell them that John Weeks also put up 30-some reps at the 225 bench at his pro day and moves well and is extremely consistent, and also played at Baylor. That doesn't hurt. So if you're going to be short, once again, make up for it.
Colin, I also remember too, looking with Nick D'Amber, our snapper last year, at some of the shorter snappers in the NFL, and Rosh Matiscik, right, who's worked with you.
Yes.
Is also not one of the tallest guys. And what does he do well? How does he set himself apart?
Ross is a really good athlete. And he even showed that this year. I think he had 8 tackles, which is the most for an NFL snapper, which helped him make into the Pro Bowl. But yeah, he wasn't super tall, but he's a very good athlete. He also played linebacker at Baylor as well.
The dude's a freaking coverage. Like he had a full on like tackle or returner in space, strip the ball, recover it. Like, yeah, he was balling this year. He's a freak.
And Casey, I'm sure I'm sure you study the amount of studying you do. You study other long snappers and see what they're doing well and what works.
I had one moment in one of the tackles this year. I forget who it was, but I remember just trying to tackle the returner because that's really hard to do. And then when it got on the ground, I felt my hand on the ball, and one of the defensive guys running on the field was like, "Hey, next time, try to rip it out." And I was like, "Dude, I'm just trying to get a hold of these guys." But no, it was like that was one of the few times in my career I was like, I remember tackling the guy and having my hand on the ball. I was like, that was the perfect moment. Why didn't I do it? But again, it goes back to like adding those things into your routine, like get in tackling drills with the defense and start working turnover circuit.
That's awesome. That's really good advice. I love that. All right, rounding it out here. This has been awesome, guys. You guys have done really well with the rapid fire section. Your final advice for college long snappers. Advice for college long snappers, Casey.
For me, it's just love it. Love it every day. Rock through the highs and the lows, because the journey to success is not a straight line. People think it is. The valleys are probably going to be a lot deeper than most of the highs, but if you can get through that, at the end of the day, you're going to have an awesome experience.
So one thing I would say is do hard things and chase perfection. I think a lot of guys will like to take the easy way out or just chase comfort. That's not what creates greatness in any sport or any activity. So do hard things and chase perfection.
Have fun with it. I mean, I'm only really 1.5 years removed from college, and some of the best times of your life, you're with your buddies and every day. And the mundane stuff of college can get old as you get older, but have fun, man. The journey is fun. Just embrace it. The high, the low. You know what? You only get to live once, and don't leave any regrets behind.
Awesome. Really good. So, all right, final thing. All right. We got the Mythbusters section. Mythbusters presented by the Kickers Bible. Okay. Thought we were done. We're not done. Okay. Casey, talk about what's one myth that people think or believe about you or snappers or snapping the NFL that you want to dispel.
it's the biggest question I get every time anyone asks me a question is that people on the punt team cannot run or hit the long snapper. It's a complete myth. The long snapper gets hit maybe more than anybody else on the punt team. We do have rules to protect us, but we are definitely getting hit during a punt.
That's what Christian said, right, Cal?
Same exact answer, which clearly it's a misunderstanding, right?
Yeah. What about you, Kyle?
Let's let Cam go because I feel like he keeps getting the tail end of this stuff.
There you go.
Dude, it's a lot harder than it looks because on TV, on film, these guys, you make it look easy and you don't really realize it as an average fan, but when it starts going, man, things are flying. And you think, hey, put the ball there. Why is the ball not right there? Well, like Casey was saying, you had J.J. Watt and Jadaveon Clowney. Pick one. Neither are going to be fun. And you get thrown in the blender sometimes and take it and roll.
I think what I'd like to add to that is snappers are athletes. They may not look like it next to other athletes on the same field, but you have to be an athlete to be able to do what these guys do at a high level too. So sometimes, their misconception is that all snappers have dad bods, that they're not very athletic. They can't tackle. They can, and they are good at it. We just got to make sure that the comparison levels are a little bit different for us, huh?
Yeah, that's Kyle Stelter saying, pump your brakes, all right? All you naysayers out there, we make tackles. Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome, guys. This has been great, man. I've always had a respect for snappers. Now, I've had some interesting ones. My good friend Bobby Daggett, who transferred from Ole Miss to UT Martin, he probably measured at 5'9", 240. I mean, he was a bowling ball, but dude, I love that guy, man. He fired the ball back. He's one of my best buddies. So I've always had a respect for snappers since then. But talking with you guys in these last couple of days, man, I definitely have a newfound respect for everything that you do. So thank you so much for coming on. This is your time to plug anything. Casey, you got anything going on? Any causes that you want us to pay attention to or shout out?
No, man, I love doing it. And my only advice for everyone else who watches this is just make people smile. That's the best thing you can do in life. Make people smile, treat people with respect, and just love life.
That's awesome. Kyle, anything you got going on that you want to plug?
Not so much I want to plug, but if anybody ever wants to get any advice or help with their snapping, they can always find me on social media, SpecialTeamsU, or my website, SpecialTeamsU.com. And then as a long snapper connoisseur in general, watch other snappers. If you're not a Giants fan or a Bears fan, that's okay. Watch these guys, take notes, and make sure that you're consistently learning from these guys as well.
Cam?
Man, have fun. Love what you do. Realize it's not all to life. I mean, I know Casey's got wife and kids. I had girlfriend and just got a puppy. And hey, you know what? There's stuff outside of football, and find what you like to do to take your mind off of it, because it can be a stressful game. And do something that makes you smile, man. Do something else that drives you, and you'll realize that drive turns into the football drive and makes you want to do it for that.
Well said. Well, guys, any closing remarks? Anything else you want to offer up before we sign off?
Yeah. Hey, it's been good. I really appreciate you having us on again. I know you're making a lot of room for us long snappers on your podcast, which is primarily probably about kickers. But appreciate you having us on here. We're all specialists and love talking this game as well. So, like I said, if any snappers are out there listening, there's always more room to improve, and there's always help out there to receive as well.
Absolutely. Check out SpecialTeamsU. Kyle does a great job, man. And, it's not just kickers. Hey, we're highlighting, punters. We're highlighting snappers. We're highlighting coaches. Anyone really that inspires people. And that's definitely what you guys do. So thanks for coming on. That's been Cam Lyons, Case Kreiter, Kyle Stelter on the Iceman Podcast. I'm Brett Arkelian. And for the rest of the Iceman Podcast team, stay cool under pressure. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. And make sure you give us a follow or a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Music if you're so inclined to do so. For any questions or suggestions on further guests, follow us at Iceman Coaching on Twitter or on Instagram, and check out our website, icemankicking.com, for updates and new talks and podcasts. Check out our TikTok for the best clips of the newest episodes. Tune in next week for another awesome guest. I'm Brett Arkelian, and for everyone at the Iceman Podcast, so long and stay cool under pressure.
Roll another one cause I'm winning in my photo.